When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
I adore him. He's like my big brother. He was a bigger-than-life, wonderfully handsome, very, very charming man with great talent. I think I was in awe of him.
Now, before you do anything else, Jerry, introduce my song and make it lovely.
It's Academy Award time. He gets so carried away.
You couldn't get any hotter than he was. He was hot in nightclubs, he was hot on records, he was hot on television.
Okay, Dum-Dum, what'll it be?
I'll have the usual glass of milk. Are you sure this is my cue card right here?
Absolutely brilliant comedian. Perfect timing, perfect delivery. He's so great a comedian, it's a pity God gave him a singing voice.
Everybody falls in love somehow. Something in your kiss just told me that sometime is now. Everybody finds somebody someplace.
He had more guts, more courage, more dignity, and carried himself with the kind of aplomb that most men never even dream about.
There's nothing phony about the man. I mean, that's it. You look at this guy and you go, hey, he's having a good time.
The smart people.
The smart people.
Yes.
Yes. And what's the major problem confronting our universities in, like,
The smart people. You know, I never thought of that.
That's because you're dumb like me.
So what did you get? There happened to be a little food. Little food, F-U-D. We're doing 6 shows a night here. We're hungry.
How many?
Well, 2 here, 4 in the room. That's 6, Daddy. I don't care where you count it.
For almost half a century, first as partners with Jerry Lewis, then on his own, or with legendary friends like Frank Sinatra, Dean got paid for having fun. He was America's favorite swinger.
Oh, don't be nervous, folks. Dean is fine. He just fell in the wine cellar, that's all.
Why women in the song? I mean, what else is there to say about me? I love to sing, and I love women.
The Dean Martin story started in 1913, when Gaetano Cricchetti was sent a ticket to America from his brother Giuseppe in Steubenville, Ohio. Gaetano found work as a barber, and not long after, fell in love with Angela Barra, another recent arrival from Italy. In 1914, they were married. 2 years later, they had their first child, Guillermo, William. The following summer, on June 7, 1917, they had another son, Dino Paul. With his father making up to $50 a week as a barber, Dean never wanted for anything. He had his own bike, nice clothes, and was even a member of the Boy Scouts. But Steubenville was a tough town, a town of steel mills and coal mines, and Dean's neighborhood was a tough one. At first, some of the other kids thought the sharp-looking, well-mannered Dino was a sissy, until they got into a fight with him and found out he was no mama's boy. At 16, he wanted to quit school because he felt he knew more than his teachers. Now, out on his own, Dean began boxing as a welterweight under the name Kid Crochet.
He was a pretty good boxer, but he was a poor boxer. As a matter of fact, as he said, he was such a poor boxer, sounded like a routine, that he didn't have enough money for tape to tape up his knuckles, so all his knuckles were broken. Every time he hit a guy, the knuckles would split a little bit.
After 18 bouts, Dean gave up the ring and went to work as a clerk in a cigar store. The place wasn't just selling tobacco. In the back was a gambling casino. Dean soon graduated from clerk to croupier. When his aunts found out what Dino was doing, they told his mother he'd end up a gangster and die in the electric chair. She'd tell them they were crazy. Her son was going to be a star. Dean had never stopped singing. One of his heroes was Bing Crosby. Whenever a Crosby picture came to town, Dino was there.
Just one more word. I said that I was going to start out.
Everybody copied Dean, and then in time they developed their own style, but it was the man, Bing, he started it all.
I guess you played the dog game o'er and over.
But there was another singer Dean also idolized as a kid, Harry Mills of the Mills Brothers.
You just quarreled with Sue, that's why you blue.
Harry Mills was just a marvelous, easygoing kind of performer. Years later, when Dean and I were talking about something one day about singing styles and everything else, he said, he said it was Harry Mills that really was responsible for some of the mannerisms, he said, that I picked up.
After work, Dean and his friends would hang out at the clubs in town. His buddies would always make him get up and sing with the band. And he was pretty good. By 1938, he was getting offers to sing professionally with local bands. He also got his first stage name, Dino Martini. It had nothing to do with a fondness for the drink. There was a popular opera singer named Nino Martini, and Dean wanted to cash in. As the 40s began, Dean was on the air and on the road with Cleveland band leader Sammy Watkins.
Here is the Sammy Watkins medley to match the season. Jingle Bells, Silent Night, and Dean Martin singing White Christmas.
It was Sammy who changed Dino's name to Dean Martin. And from the start, Dean loved getting laughs as much as hearing applause. Even then, he'd kid around with songs.
Handsome guy started to come down the stairs to a bolero tempo of Temptation. Handsome, so good looking, and he starts to sing Temptation. Yous came, I was alone, I should have known, yous was temptation. I fell off the chair.
In December of 1943, Dean got his first important break, an offer to follow Frank Sinatra, the biggest singer of the decade, into the swank Rio Bamba nightclub in New York. Although Dean got good reviews, he wasn't the smash Frank was, but the two singers became good friends.
Well, for starters, I think Frank offered to help Dean early on. And Dean told him that he really appreciated it, and he did, but he really would like to have tried to make it more on his own.
Making it on his own in New York was tough going at first. When gigs and money became scarce, Dean went back to one of his earlier professions, boxing, only he wasn't fighting in Madison Square Garden.
Dean told me that when he was young, that the way he made a living, because he had no skill, was to invite people in a hotel room and charge every person in there 50 cents, and then he and his friend would punch each other until one of them was knocked out.
At the time, Dean was living with 6 other guys in one hotel room. One of them was an 18-year-old comic named Alan King.
Dean was the leader. Dean was the leader, the troublemaker. Dean always made trouble for everybody. He'd start a rumor at one side of the room, then deny it on the other side of the room. And before the evening was over, everybody was fighting with everybody. Did he say that? Dean said, what are you asking me? I just walked in.
Things started looking up when Dean landed a daily 15-minute local radio show. He even did screen tests for Columbia and MGM. But Hollywood wasn't interested. To them, he was just another Italian singer. And then, one afternoon in 1944, came a chance meeting with a young comedian named Jerry Lewis.
Dean was staying at the Belmont Plaza. I was appearing at the Glass Hat at the Belmont Plaza. And we met in the coffee shop a couple of times, and his sense of humor and mine, we just kicked in and we became very, very friendly.
Before long, Dean and Jerry often found themselves on the same bill. But performing together was the furthest thing from their mind. Then in the spring of 1946, they were both playing at New York's Havana Madrid. One reviewer wrote that they had all the makings of a great act, but the two friends didn't pay attention. They were just kidding around. Who could make money doing that? So they continued to go their separate ways. And then a few months later, Jerry was booked into Skinny D'Amato's 500 Club in Atlantic City. The date was July 25th, 1946.
And the singer that was on the show, a guy named Jack Randall, good singer, had a very bad case of laryngitis. And Skinny D'Amato asked me who I thought should replace him. I said, Jesus, I got the best replacement in the world. My friend Dean Martin, who I think is in New York and he's not working. And Skinny said, nah, I don't want another singer. I said, but you don't understand something. He don't just sing. He and I do things together that's really good. He said, oh, okay. So he books Dean. Dean comes in the first night. He sings his 3 songs. I did my record act. And we're in the dressing room. Skinny came up and said, where's all the funny things you guys are going to do? You either do them in the next show or you're both out of here. So I sat down and I wrote about 20 ideas. And Dean and I put it on its feet. The next show, we were on the stage 2 hours and 45 minutes. And the rest is history.
Got Mr. Stripes there. Yes, sir. When did you enlist? I joined the war in 1925. There was no war in 25. That's why I enlisted for 6 in April.
Soon after Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis first teamed up, they became the talk of show business.
The first night that Dean and I worked together, there were 4 people in the joint. But by the 4th night, you couldn't get into that club.
Now, let me finish. I want to fight the big no more. In the ring, it's big no more. You want to fight in the ring? Well, why not? What's against my religion? What's your religion? I'm a devout coward.
Well, the appeal was that not that we didn't care about the audience, but we never looked at the audience. We would work like I am talking to you now. We would work to each other.
That is the Union Band.
I don't care about you or your Union Band.
Oh! See how mad they get?
I'm 19 and he's 29. And this wonderful balance between these 2 men, which was really the love that we had for one another, is what made that thing work.
I'm warning you. No. Off the stand.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry.
All right, let's take it from Asia Minor. Here we go.
Asia Minor.
Dean and Jerry were quickly becoming known as the wildest act in the business, maybe too wild for the more sophisticated clubs. But in the spring of 1948, they were booked into the most famous and classiest of them all, New York's Copacabana.
Show that maybe this show you and I, we could sing together and do it.
Do it?
And get a boat one.
Let's make it a little harder, huh?
All right.
You and I do a trio.
A trio?
What's so funny?
Where are we going to get 4 guys?
With their smash success at the Copa, Dean and Jerry were officially in the big time. While still appearing at the club, they entered the new medium of television, making their TV debut on the very first Ed Sullivan Show, and later were an even bigger hit on Milton Berle's Texaco Star Theater. And then they were off to Hollywood to play the town's top club, Slapsy Maxie's. Opening night, the entire movie colony packed the place to see what all the shouting was about. They weren't disappointed.
Then after our first show, about 5 producers came backstage and we signed a 6-year contract with Hal Wallace. That's how fast things happened with Jerry and myself.
Soon, all of America was introduced to the antics of Martin and Lewis with their first film, My Friend Irma.
Tell them about Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, the terrific new comedy team that'll lay him in the aisles? Yeah, Joe. Martin's the one who sings.
See it in your smile, I hear it in your sigh, that we've found a feeling higher than high, my own, my only, my own.
What does Lewis do?
A male seal, a female seal, both together, a baby seal,
The offers kept pouring in for the team. NBC signed them for a weekly radio show.
It's the new, the great, the different, the Martin and Lewis Show.
Dean,
Yeah?
I'm scared.
Look, we've done all right so far. We shouldn't be afraid. We did all right in nightclubs, didn't we?
Yeah, but those people paid $10 cover charge so they had to like us. But at a radio show, the audience gets in free, and at those prices, they can afford to hate us.
They started recording for Capitol Records. And in between, Dean found the time to get married to Jeannie Biggers, who he'd met while he and Jerry were appearing in the Orange Bowl parade. It was love at first sight.
I was Orange Bowl queen, and he just followed the float. I looked down, and there he was, it was Christmas time, and he was carrying Christmas packages and just following the float. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I think that was we decided that was kismet. That was it. That was a lockup.
Martin and Lewis's schedule was so jam-packed that Dean and Jeannie's honeymoon was actually the publicity tour for My Friend Irma. The new Mrs. Martin couldn't help but feel a little jealous of her husband's other partner.
They just had more fun than anybody, I think. I envied them the good times that they had. And when they would work on stage, Dean and Jerry worked to each other. They made each other laugh. They would forget that there was an audience. And I think that's what made their act so extraordinary. Because, I mean, it was so contagious.
The single funniest act, meaning if you wanted to put a laugh meter on an audience, was Martin and Lewis. By far, no act in my career have I ever seen get the kind of laugh that they both had.
In the fall of 1950, Dean and Jerry also became two of television's biggest stars with their monthly appearances as hosts of NBC's Colgate Comedy Hour. Scheduled opposite CBS's usually invincible Ed Sullivan, the duo beat Ed in the ratings every time they were on.
Hello. Hiya, here we are. Yes, dancers and funny patterns.
That's fine, fellas, but we have nothing for teams.
We're not a team, we work together. We work together, get a load of this. Here we are, just you and I. Let the world hurry by.
The show's staff always looked forward to Dean and Jerry's appearances. The rehearsals were wilder than the shows themselves. Dean quickly became everybody's favorite of the pair.
I never saw any temperament come from Dean. Very relaxed, and he made everybody else feel relaxed. Dean also was the funnier of the two. Funnier in the sense that Dean came up with wonderful, wonderful lines all the time.
This is all of it, huh? You didn't leave nothing. None of this is in the locker. This is the whole thing.
This is everything. There's no more.
Good boy.
But I wanted you should build up my body like those other fellas. Strong.
Well, you get your health back. We'll see what we can do.
By 1952, Martin and Lewis were the hottest act in show business. Their personal appearance tours broke attendance records all over the country. Wherever they went, it was pandemonium.
We played the Paramount Theater here, seated 4,000 people, and there were 75,000 people around the block.
And you bought a ticket for 75 cents, which was a lot of money those days, and you went inside, you saw a movie, and then Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis did a show for a half an hour. They screamed at them. The audience would go from the theater to 43rd Street, and there was a window that you could look up, and there was their window. They would open the window, and they would shout at the crowd, and they would throw programs out or pictures, and there was no traffic. There was just people, boom, there, like it was New Year's Eve.
Same thing happened at the Chicago Theater. When we played there the next week, we played 9 shows a day, 63 shows in the week. We did 175 shows in 21 days.
For all the team's success, Dean was beginning to feel frustrated playing straight man to the wildest, zaniest comedian in show business. As he seemed to have less and less to do in their movies and TV shows, the talk in the industry was that Dean would be nowhere without Jerry. Jerry himself knew better.
He was the spine of what was Martin and Lewis, though Jerry got all of the accolades.
All right, drop it, Barney, drop it. Now, you apologize to me and make it quick, because if I walk off the stage without an apology, you're going to suffer the consequences.
I'll take the consequences.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
With rumors that all was not well behind the scenes, Dean and Jerry's on-the-air kidding around now seemed to have an edge to it. The strain really came to the surface when Dean had his first big hit record with That's Amore in 1953. Even then, when Dean was doing what he did best, singing, Jerry upstaged.
When the moon hits you high like a big bit of fire, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
The people around Dean began saying that without Jerry, he could be another Perry Como. At the same time, Jerry's entourage was telling him that he could be another Chaplin if Dean was out of the picture.
Look now, Sue! Go ahead, sing now! And again, go ahead, sing! Sing now! Sing! Go ahead, sing now!
Dean wanted to concentrate on his singing career and to try his hand at dramatic acting. Jerry himself wanted to direct, write, and produce. The act was holding them back. By the spring of 1956, Dean had had enough.
Well, I just quit. I told them, this is it. I'm through. No more of this stuff. And of course, there was a big meeting with all the heads of Paramount Studios. And they said, you can't walk out on $20, $30 million. I said, well, you just watch me. And I walked out, that's all.
When Dean and I split, we angered this country. He didn't know if he'd have an audience. I didn't know if I'd have one.
On July 25th, 1956, 10 years to the day after they officially teamed up, Dean and Jerry gave their last performance together at the Copacabana in New York.
And there was everybody in show business in that Copa that night, watching the death of this magic. I don't know how I got through that. I don't know how he got through it. And I went up to my suite. Dean went up to his. And I called him on the phone. I said, thanks for a great ride, and I love you. And he said, I love you back. It was a great ride. And we hung up. We didn't talk for 20 years.
Practically everybody in show business figured that Jerry couldn't miss on his own. As for Dean, they were giving odds his career would be finished within a year. For a while, it looked like everybody was right. With the breakup of Martin and Lewis, 1957 marked the first time in more than 10 years that Dean Martin was on his own. His first solo film, 10,000 Bedrooms, wasn't doing well at the box office. But then he got his musical career back on track with a nightclub engagement at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. He had an idea for a character he could play, himself. He knew he looked like a guy who enjoyed the good life, and he decided to make the most of it.
And here he is for your enjoyment, direct from the bar, Dean Martin.
Once Dean had reestablished himself as a singer, he turned his attention to resuming his movie career. Out of the blue came an offer to co-star in The Young Lions with the two biggest actors of the 50s, Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift.
My manager called and said, would you mind working with Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift? I said, are you drunk? Would I mind? I said, I'd love it.
With his performance in The Young Lions as a New York playboy turned soldier, Dean established himself as a film star in his own right. After the success of The Young Lions, he landed a part in Some Came Running, co-starring with his old friend, Frank Sinatra.
They needed somebody in Some Came Running who was supposed to drink a lot and gamble and go with women that don't go any farther. My dearest friend, Dean Martin, that was made for him. And I think that role was made for me because that was one of the best roles I've ever done.
I learned a little while back that certain conditions bring a gambler luck, you know? And, oh, thank you. And this here hat's one of them. You know, every time I take this hat off, something bad happens to me.
After Some Came Running, Frank and Dean became even closer. The chemistry was different than it had been between Dean and Jerry, but it was just as unique.
You know, ever since you give up drinking, you've been impossible.
They had such a good time together. The only problem was, that, as Dean said, he said Frank wanted to keep me up late all the time.
In January of 1960, Frank and Dean, along with Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, brought the fun they had offstage to the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas.
I don't remember any performer being so instantly loved as Dean. If you would look at the audience, when he came out, the smiles on their face in anticipation of what he was going to say or do was absolutely unbelievable.
With the meeting of all this talent on one stage, Frank called the show The Summit. The papers had another name for it, the Rat Pack.
When you were in Vegas and they were there was an excitement to the town that you could feel. It was electric. The town came alive.
I like it. I like the one where the teacher said, Charming, you got a fairy godmother? He said, no, but we got an uncle we keep a close eye on. Then I should have come in, folks.
It was like an orgy of these funny guys. And there was no show. There wasn't like, you do this, I'll do this, you do that. They were just there. They sang, they kibitzed. It was the hottest ticket in the world.
Yeah, well, the way I see the thing, I'm going down to the Mystic Night to the Sea Laws there, and we're going to talk to a few people. Hey, if all the women in Texas were as ugly as your mama, the Lone Ranger's going to be alone for a long time, yeah.
By 1964, Dean Martin was one of the busiest performers in Hollywood. In 4 years, he made 15 films. There were the Rat Pack films, Ocean's 11, Sergeant's 3, 4 for Texas, and Robin and the Seven Hoods. And then there were other films like the Western Rio Bravo with John Wayne and the musical Bells Are Ringing with Judy Holliday. In private life, Dean was busy too. By then, he and Jeannie were the proud parents of 7 children. America's favorite swinger was actually a dedicated family man.
He was home every night for dinner. That was one of the things I asked of him, and he never reneged on that. We had dinner, all of us, every single night.
You knew that it wasn't like your friend, the doctor, or the pharmacist's family. You knew there was something special. And also seeing Frank Sinatra, Peter Lawford, Sammy Davis Jr., in your living room also made it a little different.
He was on the charts again, too. In true Dino fashion, he stumbled upon his first hit in years during the last minutes of a recording session.
While we were recording this album, Mood album, Dream with Dean, we get to the last song. Dean decided he didn't want to do it. Well, we had about 30 minutes left. I needed one more song. So we're discussing it out in the studio. And Dean's piano player held up his hand. And he said, hey, Dean, how about my song? And Ken Lane began to play. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ooh, that's nice. This is the one. This is the hit.
Everybody falls in love somehow.
Everybody Loves Somebody became the first single to knock the Beatles out of #1. With the record success, Dean's recording career really took off. Over the next year and a half, he'd record 7 gold albums in a row. By the mid-60s, Dean Martin was appearing in living rooms across the country with guest shots on TV's biggest variety shows. He was such a hit during an appearance at the Hollywood Palace that every network wanted him for a series of his own. He said he'd do it if he only had to show up 1 day a week, on taping day. Dean figured no network would ever go for a schedule like that. He was wrong.
Love somebody sometime. Everybody falls in love somehow.
On Thursday, September 16, 1965, Dean made his debut as host of The Dean Martin Show on NBC.
There's no point in singing the whole song. You might not buy the record. If your picture looks a little out of focus, that's the way you look to me, too. Tell you that. Now, you know I'm getting tired already? No, don't laugh. I got a whole season to do this NBC show, and they ain't taking any chances.
At first, the reviews and the ratings were less than terrific.
The first 3 shows consisted of Dean singing a couple of songs, introducing a monkey act, a juggling act, a singer who hadn't been on the charts in 3 years.
After NBC fired the show's producer, Dean asked his director Greg Garrison to take over. Garrison's first order of business was to custom tailor the show to Dean.
He's a great-looking guy, and what are you going to surround a great-looking guy with? You know, you got to surround him with great-looking girls.
Before long, Dean found himself in the company of a bevy of beauties, the Gold Diggers. Their weekly frolics with Dean gave a touch of sex to prime time.
And as a matter of fact, it caused a couple of problems periodically because at dinner, sometimes Jeannie would say to Dean, well, who was that blonde that was paying so much attention to you? And he would say, well, that was one of Greg's friends.
Another trademark of the show was Dean's lack of rehearsal.
I had New York actors ask me, they said, is it true that Dean doesn't rehearse with you? I said, no, he doesn't. He watches it sometimes in the dressing room. Greg usually would rehearse it with you. And the first time you did it live on the air.
See, my wife bought me a toupee for our anniversary, and I'd like to return it.
Well, do you have it with you, sir?
It's under the hat.
It wasn't laziness on Dean's part. It was that he wanted to be under rehearsed. He wanted to have that adrenaline rush that whatever happens, he was going to be on top of, and he was.
Now, would you want a full exchange? Oh,
Well, I liked a straight man who didn't laugh.
Well, of course, if you wish to exchange it, we'd have to have the price tag.
You sure you worked with Jerry?
Yeah. But our stuff wasn't this funny, I'll tell you that.
There were stories that Dean worked only one day a week so he could play golf the rest of the time. The truth was, he was busier than ever. While taping the series, he also acted in over a dozen movies, including The Silencers, in which he starred for the first time as Matt Helm, the super spy. And with the continuing success of his variety show, Dean became the highest-paid entertainer in TV when he signed a 3-year contract for $34 million.
We sold the television show to NBC about 5 or 6 years after we started. Part of that arrangement was that Dean ended up with a lot of RCA stock. The truth of the matter is that Dean was, and still is, the largest individual holder of RCA stock in the world.
Dean was generous with his success. He never forgot who helped put the show on top.
He said, and you're going to be my partner. I said, I thought I heard you said partner, but I know how you feel about partners, Dean. I said, we did a little joke about that. He said, we got a deal. And he reached out and he said, and I looked at him, I went, yeah, and I shook his hand. Now, we've been together for 30 years. 30 years. And that's all that's ever existed between us, was that handshake.
Every week, Dean was host of the biggest stars in show business. Frank Sinatra, Lena Horne, Louis Armstrong. He even got legends like Orson Welles and Jimmy Stewart to join in the fun.
And then the flirty, flirty guys with their flirty, flirty eyes.
And one night, he got the thrill of working with his boyhood idols, Harry Mills and the Mills Brothers.
The guys came out and they started to rehearse. I looked at Dean and he went, the guys are great, aren't they? He said, that's the guy. Not Crosby, that's the guy.
I'd rather have a paper doll to call my own than have a fickle-minded real lover. They remembered it, yeah. Hey, the Mills. Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from... What are we training for what? Find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is up beside the down.
By 1967, The Dean Martin Show was the #1 program on television, with 50 million viewers a week. His Christmas show with Frank Sinatra was one of the highest-rated shows in NBC history.
Embrace me, my sweet embraceable. Embrace me, my irreplaceable. Just one look at you, my heart grew thick seeing me. You and you alone. It's like being on I Spy with all the running.
The Dean Martin Show continued on NBC for 9 seasons. With Dean as host, every Thursday night at 10 was party time.
Above all, I want my arms about you. Don't you be a naughty baby. Come to Papa, come to Papa. My sweet embraceable you.
He was an easygoing guy. And what you didn't really realize is how impeccable his timing was and how graceful he was in moves and how well he worked with other talent, because it came across so naturally that you thought he was just being himself. And that was, I think, the special talent of Dean Martin.
Something in your kiss just told me.
There was one time when he sang a song, and it was just great. And I said to him, I said, Dean, that was great. And then I saw this little boy in Dean Martin, a little tiny boy who was getting complimented by me. And he said, was it? He had no protection at that moment, and he was as in need of a compliment as I was, as you were, as we all were.
In 1970, he co-starred as the pilot in the disaster classic Airport. He was as big a draw as ever in his nightclub act, but his busy schedule took its toll on his marriage, and in 1973, he and his wife Jeannie divorced. A year later, his television series ended as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, with great pride, I give you America's favorite comedian, Mr. Jack Benny.
Dean continued on TV until the early 80s, hosting his celebrity roast specials.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm in the most difficult position of any personality that has ever been roasted on the Dean Martin Show, because nearly everything they said about me is true.
I have a friend who loves what you do every year and who just wanted to come out and say, would you send my friend out, please? Where is he? Will you send him out here? Come here.
But perhaps the most unforgettable moment of Dean's career happened on Labor Day weekend, 1976. It was an event Martin and Lewis fans had been hoping for 20 years.
It was the thrill of my life to have him stand there next to me.
After the telethon, the former partners continued going in their separate ways for another decade. And then a tragic event occurred that would reunite them once again. On March 20th, 1987, Dean's son, Captain Dino Martin Jr., a pilot in the Air National Guard, was reported lost during maneuvers. What was left of the plane was found on the side of a mountain. A few days later, Dino Jr. was laid to rest with a military funeral.
Now, there are a lot of people that showed up. Friends of the boy and of the family. And a guy showed up that I saw out of the corner of my eye and stood in the back. He didn't make his presence known, but he wanted to be there. It was Jerry. And he left. He didn't go over to Dean. He didn't want any cameramen from 100 feet away taking pictures of the two of them together.
Later that night, Dean's agent and closest friend, Mort Viner, told him that Jerry had been at the funeral.
And Dean just looked at Mort and he went, "Can you get him on the phone?" Mort said, "Sure." Went in the other room, he got him on the phone, and he called Dean. He said, "Jerry's on the line." Dean went in the other room, and we saw, how the extensions are when light is, something is lit up on the phone, and he talked to Jerry for 20, 25 minutes. And the light went out. And then we waited for about 15, 20 minutes until he came out. And then he came out. And he looked at us and he went, I just thanked him.
Do you know how long I've been waiting in this goddamn wing here?
A few years later, in 1989, Dean and Jerry appeared on stage for their last time together. The occasion was Dean's 72nd birthday.
I am here to present you with this happy birthday cake for 72 years of joy that you've given to the world. And why we broke up, I'll never know.
Me either.
I have no idea what happened.
It's because I was a Jew and you were a Dago.
No, you're the Dago. I'm the Jew.
In the few years following his last appearance with Jerry, Dean seldom made public appearances. When Frank Sinatra tried to get him back to work with a reunion of the Rat Pack, Dean's heart just wasn't in it. After only a few performances, he left the tour. Many of his closest friends believe Dean never totally recovered from the loss of Dino Jr. By 1991, he gave up performing for good.
We see each other, and I have dinner with him just about every Saturday night. And it's just as if it was the first week. I don't know how to explain that. But if ever there were pain, there was pain, there was always much more laughter and love.
Everybody finds somebody someplace.
We had a genius in our midst, unrecognized, probably unfulfilled, and more than likely the most underrated, greatest straight man that ever lived.
That someplace.
It's such a pleasure these days to be able to speak of Dad, because there's been a quiet period since Vegas ended, since the shows ended. I feel that has not been able to appreciate how everyone loves him and cares for him.
Made it well worth waiting.
I don't know of any more honest performer in show business than Dean. And the audience knew, they felt his honesty.
Everybody loves somebody, somebody. The guy that I know, the guy that I've spent the last 30 years with, is the sweetest, kindest, most gentle human being I've ever known in my life.
Dean Martin passed away on Christmas morning of 1995 at the age of 78, leaving behind a legacy of music, laughter, and charm to millions of fans around the world who would forever know him as Dino.
She's a beautiful bareback rider who's going to ride a horse with no clothes on. So you better send your kids to bed unless you want them to see a horse with no clothes on.
Can I help you, sir?
Yeah, I'm in the market for a wife.
Ah, wife. Good. New or used, sir?
I haven't made up my mind.
Well, let me tell you, you've come to the right place. I'm Swingin' Sam, the wife-swapping man. I got models in all shapes, sizes, colors, and body styles. All fully guaranteed 5 years and 50,000 smiles. Now you step right into the showroom, and we'll see what we can do. Sir? Right this way, sir.
take care of yourselves, and remember, everybody loves somebody, and I love you all very, very much. Good night, and God bless you.